All right, it's been a month and I shaved my beard, but I assure you I am the same person. Maybe you will abstract that from my behavior. But in any case, today I'm going to take on this rather daunting task of trying to finish this crash course on relational frame theory. And as promised, I am going to try to provide a model of dysthymia, which more broadly could be applied to just about any kind of psychopathology that is based on relational frame theory. I'm going to have the caveat that it's not really just relational frame theory that it's based on. I'm going to call it maybe something like a behavior analysis, ACT, and relational frame theory model of dysthymia or chronic depression. Okay, and in order to do this, I'm going to introduce a new concept, or a couple of new concepts. One is a concept from behavior analysis that is not really part of relational frame theory as I understand it. It is maybe popularized, or at least I ran across it first from Kelly Wilson's work. Wilson's work summarizing this literature, such as in his book Mindfulness for Two. So to summarize this, this is the question of and the distinction between aversive stimulus control, versus appetitive stimulus control. Appetitive stimulus control, which, as you can see from that word, appetitive has to do with appetite. And we speak in this funny behavior speak of my behavior falling under or coming under aversive stimulus control, or behavior coming under appetitive stimulus control. Let me give you an example. For the past month, I have not completed the 5th and final video. I believe I had a little bit of avoidant behavior going on. I mean, now again, I got busy and all that good stuff, but I think also there was something daunting about this final 5th and final video. And so one could say, behavior analyst might say that my behavior was falling under aversive stimulus control. The stimulus being the thought of completing the video, was then having a lot of control over my behavior. We don't like to say, he didn't do it because he didn't want to do it, because that doesn't explain very much. We want to talk in terms of external factors that are, in theory, manipulable. So my thought might not be manipulable, but the degree to which I take my thoughts seriously might be. And then what you manipulate is whether someone in the environment is cueing me to maybe take that thought a little less seriously, or maybe someone in my environment, for those familiar with ACT, might be reminding me of what rewards there might be and how it might be worth it for me to have some anxiety and have some discomfort for the sake of completing this 5th video, and so forth. Okay. So aversive stimulus control, appetitive stimulus control. Now it turns out, and this is the part that Kelly really likes to talk about and that I think is really important, that there are different characteristics of behavior that has fallen under aversive control versus behavior that has fallen under appetitive control. So you might imagine a rat in a cage, and you might, I don't know, pay some lab assistant $10 an hour to watch this rat for a number of days and track how many times he or she is engaged in various different behavior, and kind of graph that out. And so I graphed a little example here, and you know, I don't know if this is in the least bit realistic, but okay, they did this much preening, they did this much feeding, this much mating or perhaps looking for a mate, this much exploring, this much what does that say? Sleazing? No. Sleeping. This much digging and this much running and this much vocalizing and so forth. You know, you could imagine more behaviors that a rat might engage in. And I have made a little curve up here to represent the breadth of behaviors, and I've also made that curve, it's not the rising sun over a bunch of badly drawn buildings. What it is that these little breaks and or little dots here indicate that these behaviors might have a certain flexibility or suppleness, that they're permeable to influences from the external environment. The environment changes and something shifts in the behavior. There's a prospect for mating, and so maybe then the animal drops what they were doing and runs over to try to mate, or some other cue results in some other flexibility and change in their behavior. So the behavior is responsive, it's sensitive to changes in the environment, and it's a very broad number of behaviors. Now, let's suppose, being the lovely psychology researchers that we are, we do something a little unpleasant, like electrify the bottom of the cage that the rodent lives in. And at this point, we then graph what behaviors it engages in. And now the curve looks rather different. Now we have just a few behaviors, and this is behavior under aversive stimulus control. It tries to escape, or it actually escapes, or it freezes, or it runs around in circles, and that's about it. It does a lot of all three of those and nothing else. So we see that this curve has narrowed terrifically. And I also drew the curve kind of with a thick line to indicate that it's kind of impermeable. There could be changes in the environment, and the animal will not respond very much to them. It will not change its behavior. It will keep doing what it's doing. So that's some of the differences of quality, some of the characteristics of behavior that's fallen under aversive control versus behavior that's fallen under appetitive control. So we're the same. We have the capacity to think, and because of the magic of transformation of stimulus function that we've gone over, the stimulus might be a purely symbolic one. I might look at my computer and go, oh, that fifth video, oh, boom, that curve collapses. I'm not going to do it. In fact, I'm just going to surf Facebook and surf Facebook and drink some more water and surf some more Facebook, for example. On the other hand, maybe this afternoon someone actually emailed me and said, "Hey, Joe, where's that fifth video?" Actually, someone did. And so that was really an augmental for me. We haven't gotten into augmentals, but it really reminded me of why I'm doing this, because there are actual real live people out there who watch these. You're not just a number that adds to my number of clicks on the video, number of minutes watched. You're actually a person, and that stimulated my appetite for the kind of reward that I get knowing that someone's watching this. And so my behavior went from this kind of lockdown, I don't want to do the fifth video, it's going to be hard, it's going to be complicated, back out again to, oh, well, there's a lot of things I could do, and hey, here's this guy emailing me, and that kind of softened up my behavior a little bit, and my behavior fell back under appetitive stimulus control and became more flexible, and I was then able to drop what I was doing and say, hey, I'm gonna go mate with this rodent. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna that's a joke, folks. I'm gonna go make this video. And so that's what I'm doing. So appetitive versus aversive stimulus control. Okay, now I'm gonna throw something else in here at this point, which is this idea of ironic processes, okay? And so sometimes people give the example, and I think some of the early research may have had something to do with peeing in public. Okay, you can't urinate in a stall or let's say a urinal if you're a man, stall if you're a woman, because someone is in the bathroom and they might hear you or so forth. And so what's ironic is the harder you try, the less the muscles respond and the harder it is to actually pee. So it's ironic. The more you try, the worse it gets. Okay. And there's a lot of ironic processes, of course, with anxiety, with public speaking. The more I don't want to fumble on my words, the more I fumble on my words. The more I don't want to make this noise while I'm making videos, the more I do it. And so this is a kind of behavior that involve ironic processes, and this would also include a subset of behavior of trying not to think something. Dostoevsky talked about a white bear, or you could have a pink elephant or something. And this is this idea that if you tell someone, listen, think about anything you want, but don't think about a white bear, and then you tell someone else, think about anything you want, maybe a white bear, or not, or anything you want, the chances are good that the guy that you told not to think about a white bear, maybe if this was a controlled study, there'd be 30 in each group, randomized and so forth, probably the folks who'd still be thinking about a white bear would be the ones you told not to think about one. If you kind of quizzed them 6 hours later after part B of the experiment, you beep them and ask them, how often are you thinking about a white bear? Well, the guys and gals who are having more frequent, still having frequent thoughts about a white bear are more likely to be the ones who were in the group that you told, think about anything but don't think about a white bear, compared to the ones that you told, think about anything, white bear, something else, doesn't matter which. So now if we take this a little further and think about just the nature of aversion, if I touch a hot stove, my hand jerks back and avoids that pain and that possible damage to my body. That's just basic to our human and animal nature. That's what aversion is avoiding stimuli that are painful, that might be associated with destruction of tissue and possible then death and inability to pass on one's genes. Natural selection has seen to it that we are avoidant of anything that could destroy our bodies, prevent us from reproducing. So now if we put all these pieces together, if we put together everything we've learned, we can come up with a pretty interesting and pretty cool model of dysthymia. And it looks something like this. So there's a painful thought of some kind. I'm a loser, let's say. And I shouldn't have even said painful. I should have just said a thought, because then it's transformed into pain. The magic of transformation of stimulus function transforms a thought about being a loser into what seems like the reality of being a loser, and therefore having no worth and being worthy of being harmed by the tribe, tossed out of the tribe, being criticized and so forth. It becomes very painful, which triggers avoidance. And that triggers ironic processes where we're trying to avoid something, but the more we avoid it, the more we think it. It's kind of like Mary had a little, her fleece was white as, you're not going to think those things. And the more you try not to, the more you will. Then arbitrary applicability comes in here, maybe not right here, but somewhere, that, gee, anything, maybe arbitrary applicability should have come right before the painful thought, but anything can mean anything, right? We can relate any two stimuli via a relational frame, and we'll find a way that they relate. And then we have an increase of the thought via the ironic processes, and also elaboration through arbitrary applicability, and the elaboration of avoidance behaviors, and more painful thoughts. And more life could get involved in this spiral until avoidance pervades everything. Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like that's still a little mushy. I hope you get the general idea. I know we're at 15 minutes here. Let's take another minute and maybe illustrate this a little further. Maybe by talking about how an ACT therapist interrupts that cycle. So, and to put this in RFT terms. So if the original painful thought was, I'm a loser, maybe in response to a rejection, or maybe just seeing a commercial where people look like winners in the commercial. And then all that RFT stuff kicks in. They are good. They are better than me. They are bigger than me. They are having more fun than me. Or to put a finer point on it, they are having fun and I am not having fun. In the relational frame of of having fun, they're the dime and I'm the nickel. Okay? And then that triggers this thought, I'm a loser, which then is interpreted through transformed stimulus function as a real threat. That painful thought becomes a real and present threat, which then triggers avoidance, which then triggers ironic processes, and the thought increases, we elaborate, we start pulling away from, I'm not going to watch TV now. That might be a good thing. But I'm not going to see movies either because they have happy people in them. And you know what? I'm not going to walk down the street either because sometimes I see people on the street who look awfully happy and they look like they're the dimes on that side of the equation for the whatever relational frame it is. Being well dressed versus poorly dressed. Being good looking versus ugly. And you know, I'm not going to actually leave the house because when I leave the house I run into people and things that through the magic of arbitrary applicability trigger thoughts that are magically transformed into reality, into clear and present dangers which I then must avoid, which, oh, and of course, should have stuck in the model there, the rigidity, somewhere in here, maybe with the avoidance, of course, that's aversive stimulus control here. And now we get the rigidity of fewer and fewer behaviors occurring and less responsivity of those behaviors to the environment. And pretty much life starts to get locked down and buttoned down and hunkered down. And now all of life starts being about trying to escape the inescapable, one's own thoughts. Trying to talk our way out of something that can't be talked out of because of arbitrary applicability of relational frames. Anything can be anything. And the more this happens, the more salient the relevant stimuli are. Loser becomes bigger and bigger and bigger in my relational network, and that relational frame is queued up more and more and more easily. Okay, that's a little rough. I hope that this has been helpful. People have told me it's helpful, so I guess I can hold lightly my thoughts that maybe I've just completely mangled it. And also hope that this final video, although maybe a little sketchy, gives at least a hint about how this all might be integrated into, maybe model was too generous a term for what I just presented, but at least a coherent integrative notion, how about notion, of how psychopathology might be explained a little bit better when we put in a little RFT, a little behavior analysis in, and not just the basics of ACT, or perhaps just your average, ordinary, if you think bad thoughts, you have bad feelings, cognitive type model. That's it. That's all she wrote. I will catch you in another video series, and hopefully somewhere else. Who knows? Take care.